What's up guys, it's Tyler. Today we are going to go over our highly anticipated Cobalt and Ion coilovers. We know you guys have been waiting for these for a while, especially the Ion ones. What I'm going to go through today is a unboxing of a full set, show you what you get in the box, kind of some preliminary setup questions that I know have been asked quite a bit, go over some features, kind of explain everything for you. Later down the line, which I hope we can get to next week, we will do a full install video. We have a couple different ways of setting up ride height, bump stop, all that, and we will go over that at that time. So we'll go a quick overview. Over here, we've got our Ion coilovers, the front set, and then I'm gonna go through a full set of the Cobalt. So I'm gonna put these Ion ones down for now. We'll get back to those later. We're gonna get to unboxing here. The Ion set is very similar to the Cobalts. As you guys know, they are both Delta Chassis cars. The big difference is gonna be on the fronts and the top hat. We'll go over that, but I'll give you a rundown. This is our Cobalt super low version. That's satisfying. We decided to go with two versions for a couple reasons. One being, we know that a lot of you guys like to go quite low. So do I, so I don't blame you. But then also, I'll talk about our rear mount design that allows us to maintain a solid ride, all while being able to go lower. Okay, so in the box, first things first, we have our hardware bag here. In that, you're gonna have a sticker, because who doesn't love stickers? You got your adjustment wrenches, your damping adjuster knobs, these are for the front, and then you have these little black rubber pieces. Now I'll show you where these go, but there are 4 in the bag just in case you lose 2. We'll get to those in a moment. Obviously you're gonna have 2 fronts, 2 rears. The fronts on the Delta cars are a traditional, what you would call McPherson strut style. So the strut and the spring are all in one. On our Cobalt version, you've got your top hats here with camber adjustment. So those are gonna go a specific way. When you get your old struts out, you will see that the bolt pattern will either be left or right side. The other easy way to tell is by your sway bar link. This is gonna be a passenger side one, and the sway bar link on the other side will be your driver's side. So with these, you have 32 clicks of damping ability through the top. Your damping knob goes up in there. Those little rubber stoppers that I mentioned, you're gonna insert one of those and then insert the knob there. Now a lot of other coilover companies, these knobs are permanent. We like to be able to remove them just because red's not everybody's style. You might have blue accents in your engine bay. Nobody likes that Superman look, or you may. But those are gonna be lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, right as it says on the top. Left is soft, right is hard. Now, all of our coilovers in our current, what we would call street version, we may have more down the road, this is gonna be a linear damping curve. So each click is going to increase the damping by the same amount. So it's not like you start really soft and then it ramps way up. It's a linear curve there. Recommended settings out of the box, I tell everyone just start at 16 clicks in the front, 16 clicks in the rear. It's all gonna depend on your setup, how you like your ride height, wheels and tires, etc., etc. My Cobalt, I've been rocking these for our prototype set for over a year now, I believe. And I think I have the fronts at 24 and the rears at 20. Now I'm pretty low. I do have our super low springs in the rear right now, and basically on my summer 18s, I tuck tire. Now, I talked about our super low versus the standard version. I'll show you the spring differences in here, but the front struts are gonna be the same no matter which set you go with. So I'll take that out, and I'll show you guys here. You're gonna have 3 lock rings on the bottom. Now most folks will set up ride height via the shock body like I'm doing here, except in car. You're turning it like this. Like mentioned, in our full install video, we'll show you a more in-depth, kind of more track-focused version of being able to set up bump and ride height. But for the general public, most of the time you're gonna set it through there. Now our coilovers do come with a spring preload set out of the box. You can, I would say, mess with it a little bit, but it's not a bad idea to check that the preload is good. I like to recommend about 2 spanner wrenches worth, which is approximately 4 millimeters. So what I recommend is you've got your bottom lock ring and the top lock ring here. Now these are probably tight, so what I'll do is crack one of those loose. So once you've got your bottom ring loose, you can spin the spring up and down. What I would recommend if you want to check is back this spring off until you've got wiggle room, so there's no set preload. Then work this way up until your spring is just touching. So from there, you've got 0 preload. Then take your spanner wrench on this top ring and tighten it down. But what I would do to kind of mark your spot is get this so it just touches, then start moving this up. So you move it up anywhere from 1 spanner wrench, which is approximately 2 mil thick, to 2 spanner wrenches. You move that up, so then you'll see a gap in between your 2 lock rings like that. Then you'll lock that top one in. Now once you get it in the car, like mentioned, you can adjust your ride height at the bottom here. This will be bolted to your knuckle, this will be bolted to the top, and then you can spin the whole shock body there. I do recommend anti-seize or any sort of other lubricant to keep the threads clean. You know, these are powder coated, so they're gonna hold up well to the elements, but especially here in Michigan, you're always gonna get some sort of rust and debris. And actually, I like to recommend dry lube more than anti-seize, just because then you don't get all of your rocks and your grossness stuck in there. That's a pretty good overview of the front. I did want to make mention on the Cobalts, you obviously have your camber adjustment up top. That's going to be your easiest way because you can adjust that without messing with the suspension down here. Now, we do have a slotted top hole on the bottom mount. So in reality, if you really want to get stanty boy, you can. You can max your camber up here, use a camber bolt down at the bottom, and move the knuckle in and out to give you more access. And to also note, with the camber adjustment, I recommend once you've got your ride height set in, do your camber up here. Now, if you're taking it to an alignment shop, they're most likely gonna use your top adjustment just because it's easier to get to. You do also run the risk, if you adjust the camber down at the bottom, you're actually moving the knuckle back and forth instead of the whole strut assembly. So when you move your knuckle inwards to give yourself more camber, you run the risk of your wheel hitting your strut. So as with any suspension product, make sure all your clearances are good, make sure you're not hitting anything. But that's why we include the camber adjustment on top. Unfortunately, the ions don't quite have that much adjustability. So obviously you're gonna have your second front strut coilover assembly. We'll set that off to the side. And now the rears are what I'm really excited about. This is where our ZZP coilovers kind of set themselves apart from everyone else. Now, on my Cobalt, I ran BCs for years. They're a good coilover. They're designed to do what they're gonna do. But one thing that always bothered me was if you did wanna go low, and I mean, let's be honest, you're getting coilovers, you probably wanna go a bit lower than stock, was their bottom mount is basically a cup. So your strut is only a certain length, and you run into, as you're lowering the car, the strut bottom is gonna sit into that cup. So you can only go so low. From there, you can either set your preload wrong on the strut and try and go lower with the springs, but you risk the springs popping out, or you could get a shorter strut, but with that, shorter strut means less travel, which means worse ride quality. So what we came up with is this pass-through eccentric lower mount. Now, what this means is you can go low all while the strut being able to pass through this bottom mount. So if you're wanting to go dirt nasty low, you want to tuck some wheel in the back, you can continue to pull this strut down as far as you want to go, or would like to go, all while retaining the same amount of travel here. So this one I've got in my hands is our super low version. As you can tell, it is a short strut, but I'll grab our standard length, show you the difference here. So there's your standard, and there is your super low version. So as you can see, just starting off the bat, the standard, you have about an inch more travel in the actual strut body here. But you know, if you want to go low, you have to make a few sacrifices. Now the reason we don't include the same length strut in both is because of how low the super low set can go. You'd probably run into an issue with this strut hitting your wheel. Now this is one thing that you do want to watch out for. When you install these were set up around stock fitment wheels. So HHRSS wheels, LNF Cobalt wheels, LSJ Cobalt wheels, and Ion Redline wheels are all going to fit, no problem, with our bottom mount. But if you have an aftermarket wheel, especially if it's really wide in the rear, you're going to want to mock things up, make sure you're not hitting anything before you go driving down the road. So this is going to install just like your regular strut or shock. Top's going to go up there, bottom's going to go down here. No modifications necessary. Now, you probably can't see too well from there, but if you check out the product photos, I've made sure to include it in there, but we actually have an offset bushing here. So that gives you some more room to clear the wheel when you're going low. Now, one question that we get asked quite a bit is how do you set up preload and ride height on the rear of a Cobalt? Now, I ran into this myself years ago. I had never done coilovers, as I'm sure a lot of you guys are in the same boat. So to properly set up your rear, what you're gonna do is take your spring. This is our super low set. Now on all of the Delta cars, you're gonna wanna do the adjuster on the top. So in the rear, you've got your beam, you've got your two spring perches. You're gonna set up what you think is approximate ride height. Now, this is gonna take a lot of tweaking on and off. One of the pain points of coilovers, but it'll get that fitment dialed in. So what you're gonna do is put your spring in your spring perch. Then get a jack under the spring perch, and then you're gonna jack it up until the spring fully seats. Again, as soon as it touches, you're at 0 preload. Now in the rear, what I would probably do is if you're using a jack or an exhaust stand or anything like that, give it about 1 millimeter of tour preload. So just put a little more pressure on that. Then from there, once that's seated, don't remove the jack. You'll take your strut, you will put the top bolt through, then you're gonna adjust this bottom until the bolt can cleanly go through with that jack under the car. So what that means is that is your lowest point that suspension is gonna travel. It's not ideal. That's one of the drawbacks of the beam style suspension, but that's gonna give you your most travel that you can manage out of this spring without ever worrying about this spring popping out. So you get this set, make sure the bolts pass through, tighten them down, then tighten up your rear mount here. We also have damping adjusting on the rear. Now we put it at the top here, make it a little more accessible. If you've got enough wheel gap, you could probably get in there and turn it. But same with the tops and the fronts. You got righty-tighty is harder, lefty-loosey is lighter. And that completes your rear setup. Now I'll show you guys the difference here in our standard versus our super lows. Both kits come with 6K front and 6K rear springs. As you can see, the super low, it's pretty low. You're starting at already about 1.5 inches lower than the standard set. Now, on the product description, I've kind of laid it out. Hopefully it makes sense, but if you want to go from what would be stock height, possibly even higher, I've never tried it because who needs to go higher than stock height? You're gonna want the standard set. So the standard set with the adjusters all the way up, you're gonna be pretty high in the rear. If you take the adjuster completely out of the standard set on a normal 18-inch wheel, like a L&F wheel, you can get to about finger between fender and tire. If you want to go lower than that, you're going to want to go with the super low. I never fully tested how low they can quite go because I wouldn't be comfortable running this low, but with just the spring in the rear, I was able to tuck wheel on an 18. So if you want to be a hot boy, these are the ones you want to go with. One thing that I've been asked multiple times is, why did we go with these spring rates? We got 6K front, 6K rear. A lot of folks like to think that 8K is needed. It's just simply not. With the Cobalt, based on its weight and how the struts and shocks sit, 6 kg per millimeter is what we decided upon. We think this is gonna give you your best ride, the best handling, and the ability to go low on these springs. In the future, if people want, we may go with different spring rates, but I'm not gonna promise anything. I've driven on these for a year and I love them. I obviously am a little biased, but I had BCs for 5 years before these, and these outperform the BCs far and above. So Ion guys and gals, I know you've been waiting a long time for a solid bolt-in coilover option. We're bringing those to you with these. As you can see, they are based upon the same platform. Your big difference is gonna be your top hat. Now the Ion, unfortunately, was always kind of the black sheep of the Delta family. I don't know whose idea it was at GM to stick with this style of top hat, but we're working with what we got. So obviously, compared to the Cobalt, you're not gonna have your camber adjustment up top, but you do retain that with your slotted bottom mount there. With a camber bolt, you can probably get, I would say, a little over 2 degrees. Now with this top hat, we use our bearing adapter to a OE style top hat that has a few modifications. One thing that we wanted to make sure we retained was that damping adjustment on the fly. With a normal top hat, you would have to take this whole coilover assembly out, take the top hat off, then adjust your damping, put it all back in. That's a big pain in the ass. So what we do, we have our pass-through bolt here and our flexible damping knobs for the Ions. Those are gonna go right through the top. It's gonna click right in and you're gonna be able to adjust damping on the fly. These I probably wouldn't leave in here while you're driving around. Your hood clearance is one thing, and then also because it's not the same diameter as these, you can't use your little rubber stoppers, but just keep them in the glove box, keep them handy. If you wanna go ripping one day down some back roads, just crank it up a little bit. But otherwise, same thing as the Cobalt, same thing for preload and adjustment, same 2-year warranty on the Ions that we have on the Cobalts, and then the rear is gonna be just the same. If you guys have any questions on how to set up, what setup do you think is best for me? I wanna go X low, I have this wheel and tire setup, feel free, give me an email, tyler.v@zzperformance.com. I've worked very closely on this project. It's been kind of a baby of mine for the last couple years. I'm super excited. I think these are an awesome offering for everyone. I love the way they ride, they handle great, and they look cool. So, any questions, feel free, reach out, me, customer service, anybody else. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time. Peace.